And if they're saying, oh, well, my sister had a wedding and it was fun and this and this. And I'll say, well, who was the DJ? I don't remember. That translates to that DJ wasn't that awesome.
Right.
Because I look at when I was in high school, everybody knew who the prettiest girl was. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whether you knew her personally or not, you knew her name.
Yep.
Right? So if you're that guy or if you're that DJ, when they walk out of that room, they're going to know who you were by name.
So this is episode one of two MCs and a microphone. And one of the things we're going to do is start every episode with a sip of something real nice. So today I brought us Don Julio 1942, one of my absolute favorite styles of tequila. So,
you
because
gotta love that bottle.
It is the best.
Presentation is awesome.
A nice little sip just to get us going. For this inaugural episode.
Sip.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, shit. I poured a little too much.
Cheers first. Cheers.
Hey, Todd Everett, man. Welcome to the studio. I poured a little too much.
Woo.
Is that smooth or is that smooth?
Get your chest hairs a perm.
All right. Every episode, we're going to start with something real nice like that. So that's today's. All right. So before we get to the topics that I was talking to you about before we started, I want to ask you the thing we were chit-chatting about a little while ago, and that is 2025. We're sitting here trying to rule the world, but it's a crazy time out there. It's a little bit more difficult than it was a year ago, and things are a little wacky. What's going on? And you were sharing some thoughts with me about why the industry is what it is and coming out of COVID and all that. So talk to me about what's going on in the world of DJs and MCs and event profs in general.
Right. So I just think that, during COVID, one of the things that we might not pay a lot of attention to is that it pushed everyone to want to become an entrepreneur or feel that they need to become an entrepreneur. We're in a world where they say, listen, you need to have 2 or 3 incomes coming in, right? And, for someone that's in those situations, we usually gravitate towards something that we can easily identify with or that we see. And we see that the level of entry might be low, but the end results or the potential for profits could be high, right? So, we kind of check and see what's going on. And I just think, a lot of people gravitated towards event spaces, photography, DJing, and event decorating, decor. So I think the industry has become very oversaturated. You know what I mean?
That's a good word.
And from the consumer side, when you think of DJs, we're all pretty much the same. You know what I mean?
From their point of view,
From their point of view, because, back when we were coming up, DJs had like residencies, right? You had to have a following. You had these residencies where you go in a specific venue, once or twice a week, and you had to play. You had to DJ.
Right.
And the tell of the tape was, were you making this bar or were you making this club money, from the DJ standpoint. And you created a following. If the music was good and people had a good time, they were coming back. They were bringing 1 or 2 friends. And then that just transformed into them becoming consistent visitors or customers of that specific spot. And that's how DJs grew their following and they grew their name.
And live bands, by the way, same thing.
Live bands,
you get a chance to play a bar, you bring all your friends, they pay the cover, they tell somebody else, same thing. That's how you cut your teeth.
Absolutely. And the part that was great that we miss out on is this was an opportunity for the DJ to hone their skills.
Yeah.
To have failure, to know what music was good, what music wasn't, and to also learn how to become a risk taker. Where it was you were going in there to break new music, break new records, versus just playing that specific playlist that you knew people were going to dance to, right? And I think that is sort of like schooling for a DJ, right? And you get a lot of education, a lot of experience, and you also gain the ability to learn and work with people, how to deal with certain situations. And this is the stuff that's missing, because you can easily just say, hey, I'm a DJ. Let me get a subscription with the Knot. Let me take a couple of photos. And, hey, I'm a DJ. I can DJ a wedding, right?
Call up Squarespace, get a website.
Exactly. It's Stacy and Tim who's getting married, later this year. They don't know DJ Newness from Todd Everett,
right,
or whoever.
And you mentioned the Knot. You go on the Knot, you pay your money, you can say anything you want. You look at 30 different DJ profiles on the Knot, and they all start with, yes, I'm going to give you the greatest day of your life. We are going to make your dreams come true. They'll all say the same thing. But you can't differentiate when you don't know what you're looking at.
Right. And then, I saw on Facebook, I'm not going to mention any names, but, two good DJ friends of mine, they had a bit of a debate because one DJ had stated, you can't trust the credibility of the Knot because anybody can have reviews on the Knot and stuff like that, right?
I know the conversation you are referring to, but
exactly.
Yes, continue.
And I think I understood where he was coming from. I don't think the message was delivered the way the message was intended. But I think, like, overall, when you look at reviews, right, it's not our job to break down what that review means. You know what I mean? You can have a review that says the DJ was awesome and the DJ did X, Y, and Z, right? We had the time of our life, right? Everybody was on the dance floor dancing, right? When I look at reviews like that, I don't look at it like the review is amazing, because I feel that if you're a DJ and you were paid to go there and make people dance, you were supposed to do that, right? But I always tell clients,
that you're saying this,
look a little bit deeper. Like, what's in that review that showed this person or this talent elevated your event?
Right.
I had a DJ on my team that was on my team. I had to let him go, but he got a couple of 5-star reviews and got kind of excited, right? Kind of went to his head. And I had to pull him to the side, and I told him, let's read this review. Said you did a good job, and it said you took requests very well and you played everything people were coming up telling you to play. And I told him, that's awesome, but that's telling me you're not a DJ.
That's like saying the pilot landed the plane and I didn't die.
Right. You know what I mean?
Minimum 5 stars.
And he didn't understand why. I said, well, when you're a great DJ, they don't need to come and tell you what to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or if they did, you don't just come and start playing everything that someone requests. Your job is to control the crowd, not the crowd control you. How I was taught to DJ, it was that you lead the show, people follow you. But at the point where they're coming up to you, asking you to play this, and at that point, it creates comfortability for you, right? Because they're essentially doing your job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's just saying, hey, now someone could compare me to iPod or to Spotify playlists. You know what I mean? Because essentially, you're the button that they're pushing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. So I'm so glad that you went down this road, because I have thoughts, and this
might be a rocky one.
It might be
a rocky road.
We might be getting controversial on you someday. I look at it like, and this doesn't matter if it's the Knot or Wedding Wire or Yelp or Google or whatever, reviews, right?
Right.
And you talked about going deep into reviews. This is the way I've always thought about it. No bride and groom or couple, it could be 2 men, 2 women, it doesn't matter. Any couple, no one wants to admit that their wedding was average or that it sucked.
Correct.
And every bride and groom or every couple is in a silo where they're judging you as a vendor, not by how you did compared to the other 50 weddings you did that year, but just that night.
Right.
Meaning, did they get married? Did they eat food? Did they have drinks? And did they dance? 5 stars.
Right.
That's it. It was everything. It was perfect.
Right.
But what they're not looking at, because I think a lot of the success of an event, and this goes right to what you said about how do you elevate. The success of an event starts with the crowd before it starts with, at least for us as band leaders, DJs, MCs, it starts with the crowd saying to themselves, this is one of our best friends. I'm getting to see friends and family I haven't seen. I get to get dressed up. I got food and drink provided for me, and there's music playing.
Right.
So I'm going to have a good time. No matter what that DJ does, aside from literally imploding and ruining the night.
Right.
If you land the plane without killing everybody on board, I'll make sure the party was great as an audience goer.
Right.
So every bride and groom looks at their wedding and says, well, we got those things and we had a good time. So hey, 5-star review.
Right.
But what they don't know is, what could that have event been? What could that DJ or MC have done for their wedding to take them from, yeah, everybody was here and we danced and we remember that shot we did and remember we had it was great, versus that MC, that DJ did things like the way they blended the music for us, the way they went deeper with the song selection that they chose, the way they got out and talked and interacted and took us from just a crowd that was dancing to people that had their hands up in the air and I never knew I could even do that at my wedding.
Yeah.
That's what should be a 5-star review.
Right.
But nobody knows the difference.
Yeah.
And how do you differentiate as an MC, as a DJ trying to grow your business and saying, look at all my reviews, when they say, well, everybody's got 5-star reviews.
Right.
So then you got to go deeper and explain to a prospective client, well, yes, everybody that has those 5-star reviews is saying, they showed up on time, they played the songs I asked them for, and they dressed nicely.
He was a nice guy or she was a nice girl,
Right.
We don't want to write anything bad, right? And I always say one thing is, I tell my guys this, I'm not so focused on what the client reviewed you as. I'm more focused on what the venue or the wedding planner, because they have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
You know
that's
what I mean?
That's a good point.
When
That's
you
a
have
great point.
A couple, they've never been married before. In some cases, they might have never really went to a wedding before, right? They might have experienced something that they thought was awesome, right? But then you have the wedding planner that, let's just say, does, 2 to 3 events a week, right? And they are exposed to a numerous amount of DJs or bands or other vendors, right?
Yep.
They have a lot to compare it to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these are individuals that have relationships they built up over the years with industry professionals. And they also are exposed to new talent and talent from different areas. So when they can give you a 5-star review or say, you know what? I know 50 DJs, but I can tell you why I would refer Todd Everett or whoever the case may be.
Right.
I can tell you exactly why, or tell me what type of experience you want to have.
Yep.
I know the DJ for you. This is why. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it matters. And I like to use analogies, right?
Yep.
And this is what I always say.
We're dads. That's what we do.
Exactly. When couples reach out to us, I always ask them, tell me about the last wedding experience you had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they're saying, oh, well, my sister had a wedding and it was fun and this and this. And I'll say, well, who was the DJ? I don't remember. That translates to that DJ wasn't that awesome.
Right.
Because I look at when I was in high school, everybody knew who the prettiest girl was. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whether you knew her personally or not, you knew her name.
Yep.
Right? So if you're that guy or if you're that DJ, when they walk out of that room, they're going to know who you were by name. They're not going to say, oh, it was just a DJ. They're going to know that was Todd Everett or that was DJ whomever, right? So I always look at that like, if you don't know his name or if you don't know her name, were they really that great? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's fair to say, you know, because I'm bad with names too, but that's just something that you always remember, like a great entertainer.
There's a difference between saying I don't remember the person's name because I'm not good with names, and I remember that person because of the experience they gave me versus I'm sure there was a DJ back there, but I couldn't tell you what he looked like. right. I get you.
Absolutely. And to kind of play off of that question, you know, I think that DJs aren't, and you tell me this about bands, because, you know, you can't really fake playing an instrument, right?
Right.
I think DJs aren't seen as a talent anymore. You know, I think the shift happened when we start making the aesthetics and the equipment be the talk of what it is that we do.
Right. There's Facebook groups that we both belong to where the primary post that you'll see repeatedly over and over is the setup. Look at my setup.
Yes.
Look at well, any one of us can buy an RCF, you know, tower system or the new, you know, QSC, you know, K column or whatever it's called. Any one of us can do that. Any one of us can buy. I love my both lighting tubes that I put around. They look fantastic. Anybody can buy those, you know, and we're losing the art of like, you know, I'll see DJs that put so much time and effort and money into their setup, but they don't have, but it's smoke and mirrors, right? If you strip that away, if you gave them an average setup, you know, of course it's got to sound professional, but look, aesthetics of the setup aside, if you took that away, could they still deliver the most amazing experience for their clients that, you know, without the lights?
Right.
Without the cool, you know, DJ stand that has become all the rage now.
Yeah.
Could you still, with just if you had a card table and, you know, a controller and a laptop, could you still deliver that experience? And I think that's something that a lot of young DJs coming up aren't thinking about developing that skill.
I think it's even the older DJs too, because I look at it like this, right? One of my favorite DJs of all time, hands down, and this dates back to the, you know, early 90s, is DJ Kid Capri, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
from Russell Simmons' Def Comedy Jam.
Exactly. And, you know, if you look at DJ Kid Capri, every time he DJs, I don't know what's on his writer or whatever, but he has the same setup. You know what I mean? And it reminds me of, again, going back to what I said about having a DJ residency, right? You didn't have the privilege to always work with your equipment. You know, back in the day, if you were DJing at a specific club or bar, they had their own system in there, and you just had to come in with your records, and whatever the situation is, you had to adjust to it. That was it. You couldn't take out their turntables and bring your own. You just had to play with it. Sometimes the table will be wobbly. Sometimes the needles kind of suck. Sometimes the mixer will be prehistoric. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Levels not working, dusty, whatever the case may be. But you still had to show and prove, right? And I think like the equipment thing has turned it to couples or clients now expect us to come with like a full out production, right? And, you know, one of the pain points for me when I started my business was I don't want to be the side hustle DJ. I have to turn it into a business. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, DJ has always been looked at as the side hustle, right? Something you do on the weekend when you're not at your regular job, right? And what happens is a lot of DJs come in as DJs, but they're not necessarily skilled at business, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to offer this couple a $10,000 production, and they're not really paying for it, right? So it becomes a point where you say, I got all of this overhead. I got all of this debt because I've went out and bought the best Chave moving heads, 350 or whatever the number is. And, I need to get these new speakers. I need to get this, right? You got $10,000 worth of gear and you're not charging for it because you don't understand how to properly price yourself.
Right.
You're looking at Don and Jim because their website said their prices is $1,000, but you don't know how they got to that price. You're just basically creating that for yourself, right? So a lot of times I think, we're in competition or we're in the same melting pot with individuals that don't understand DJing is one thing and running a DJ business is a total separate thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So for me, when I started my business, yes, I wanted to have the nice look and the nice setup. And then at some point, I had to stop myself when I saw that people were looking at me as an extension of what the core was. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sell you my booth and my setup. I'm trying to sell you on my talent and my skill set as a DJ.
And not that those things aren't important.
Right.
But they're not more important.
They're not
they don't
more
replace
important.
your ability to they're hiring you, not your setup.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest issues in the game now, and going back to Kid Capri, he's still using the same Technique 1200s that I saw as a kid.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Still uses the not necessarily the exact same ones, but it's a specific piece of equipment that you can use that's been around for 40 years plus years or whatever, and it still gives you the same results. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You don't have to go out and buy the new controller that just came out last week because it reminds me of like Michael Jordan sneakers, right? The marketing was so good. You thought that if I buy these shoes, I can dunk on people, I can fly, right? And for
they made the movie, right?
Right.
Be like
and for
Lil Bow Wow?
DJing, I think a lot of new age DJs, I say new age because some are young, some are older in age. They feel like, hey, if I get this or if I get these moving heads or this specific setup that I saw, this DJ with, it's going to help me get gigs or it's going to help me get more leads.
Right.
But at the same time, it's creating debt for you.
Right.
Because you're not making a return off of the investment that you're investing in all that equipment.
So let me build on that same point, and we're going full circle back to the question about how the market is right now and all that kind of stuff. So you talk about equipment and how DJs get in and they focus on their setup more than their ability to, let's say, whether it's mix music, whether it's pick the right music, but you're talking so far about the music side of it. So let me ask you about the MC side of it, because when it comes to weddings and private events, your ability to, handle the MC duties before, with the grand intros, toast, speeches, prayers, cake cutting, all that kind of stuff, your ability to introduce them for their first dance together, dances with their parents, all of that stuff where you got to be on a mic, and then into the dancing where, and I know this is something that's important to you because I've seen so many, clips of you out on the dance floor and interacting with people. I think also that is a wildly undervalued skill that a lot of DJs that are trying to enter the market, that are oversaturating the market, don't put enough attention on, is their ability to MC an event. Right. They just think, if I get the equipment and I get a Spotify premium account, like you said, I'm a DJ, I get,
right.
And I start booking. But I think that you have got to focus before equally as much your ability to play the perfect song on the perfect moment and your ability to MC an event. But a lot of guys out there say that that's not that important of a skill. I don't talk that much. I lay low. I don't interact with the crowd very much because my couples want that. Yeah. No, they don't. This is again controversial point in my opinion. Any DJ who says, my style is to lay back, my style is that's because you're not good at it. That's it.
Right.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I know you are a highly interactive DJ. So like, what are your thoughts on like, how did you get to be that kind of a DJ? And what are your thoughts on DJs that say that emceeing and interacting with the crowd is not important?
It's going to be a long answer, man.
Good.
And the reason why I say it, because I wasn't always that guy, right? When I started DJing, I named myself DJ Chokes after my worst fear as a DJ, and that's choking in front of a crowd.
Wow.
Reason why, because I was stage fright. You couldn't pay me to talk in front of people. That was just a big fear I had.
At that time, were you working for somebody else, or were you at that point even coming in by yourself?
Yeah, I've always worked. I always worked for myself. And I was just honest with myself. At events, especially back then, I wasn't the wedding DJ, but I DJ'd weddings on occasion, and I was the DJ looking for the auntie. You want to read this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I want to answer this in a couple of ways, and if I veer off, just bring me back, right?
All right.
I think DJs have too much pride. I think a lot of DJs are comfortable being at the same level and never advancing, right? One of the things that I did with myself, and I think it led me to your point of how important it is to have MC skills, whether it's a little or a lot, it's a game changer. And the thing that I always say is, it's something that's God-given. I don't think you can fake it, right? And you have to be able to sit back and say, I'm not a good MC, but I'm going to hire somebody that can work with me, right? Or I'm not a good MC because I don't really know how. I'm not afraid of people, but maybe I just need some tips or to hone my skills a little bit. So let me try to identify someone who I feel is a great MC, and let me reach out to them to see, if I can get some help or some pointers, right? When I started my company, the Todd Everett Experience, and I changed my name to Todd Everett, it was because I had a plan, right? And my plan was, I don't want to be in the corporate world anymore. I don't want to do DJing as a side hustle. I want something to live.
To clarify, when you said I don't want to be in the corporate world, you didn't mean I don't want to DJ corporate events. You meant corporate I don't want a day job where I work in.
Exactly.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Growing up, I always wanted to work for myself, right?
Yeah.
I have a degree in business. I just never knew what it would be, but that was always a passion of mine. And when I got tired of punching the clock for someone else, I had to have, I call it a come to Jesus talk with myself. You know what I mean? Yep. And I had to say, well, Todd, can you make it as a professional DJ by doing what it is that you currently do as a DJ? And I said, no, I couldn't, right? So I had to find my pain points. I had to find something that I can use to elevate my game. And what I thought about when I formed the Todd Everett Experience, and this is kind of sharing a little bit on how I got the name. I thought about going out. What is that experience like? Whether you're going to a wedding, whether you're going to the club, corporate event, whatever the case may be. And I thought about it. Okay, you go downtown Detroit. You got to pay for parking, right? You got to pay to get in, right? I like to get fresh. So I'm going to spend a couple dollars at the mall on an outfit, right? When I go in, if you see a couple of ladies you like or whatever, you got to buy them a drink. Right. You know what I mean? If you see a couple of your friends, men, we want to be the big shot, right? Oh, round on me. You know what I mean?
I got this.
Exactly. you get lucky, you might have to buy some Coney Island or something after the fact, right? And the next day you wake up and you're like, damn, I broke the bank and I didn't even have fun. You know what I mean? Like, if I can do it all over again, I would stay at home and watch, back then it might have been HBO, the movie channel, pre-Netflix and all of that, right? Yep. And so that's where I identified I have to be the solution to people feeling that way after they go out. What's missing? The experience is missing, right? And I thought about it, well, what kind of experience can you give people? So I thought about who I was as a DJ. I was someone that was passionate about music. I love music, all genres, old school, new school. Okay, we have that. I know how to mix. I'm a pretty decent DJ, right? But how can you give this experience? So I took a step back and I said, let me cross out everything that I think about myself. I got a piece of paper and I said, let me write down everything that I've heard about myself consistently, right? Always hear, great smile. Your energy is good and contagious. You know how to control a room. And I thought about that and I'm like, wow. Now these are things that people are saying about me in the corporate world or just in the outside world. Okay. And when you talk, people love to hear you talk. Oh man, you kind of keep stuff real and you speak it on a level that's relatable, right? You really command people's attention. Your biggest asset is you know how to pour into people. You know how to make people feel good. You know what I mean? So that's where the Todd Everett comes from, is the experience is going to be me. Yeah,
that's gold.
And the reason why I say it's going to be me is because if you look up, you have a DJ Scratch or DJ whatever. It's one in every country or state, right? But it's only one Todd Everett. It can't be duplicated. You have to ask God to do that, right? So the one thing that you can give people that can't be duplicated is you, right? Then I took it a step further. Everybody that DJ, it's a possibility they can mix and they can do this. What else can you give them? I'm going to sell them my mindset. The things that most DJs don't look at. Everybody's so focused on the music, but for me, it's everything outside of the music that gives you the Todd Everett experience. Music is like 25% of it. What's my thought process or how would I respond or react to certain things at an event? You know what I mean? Am I going to get there to set up just in time for me to be ready for the doors to open and people are coming in? Or am I going to be there so early that I'm able to dive in and help the decorator or the planner set up place cards or whatever the case may be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I thought on it. So going back to your question about the MC part, it's very important because I feel that you need that to build the personal connection with the guests, and I talk about it like, how do you feel on your first day of class or your first day at a job orientation, right? And I went to Eastern Michigan. I think about, for all those Eastern Michigan alumni, it's a building called Pray Herald. That was like, no hate. It's a building called Pray Herald where all the...
Go Broncos. Western Michigan. Western in the house.
And you know what? I wanted to go to Western, so I envy you for that.
Fellow Mac brethren.
But I love
We're
my
Mac
Eagles.
schools.
Right, I love my Eagles, but I think about like being in Pray Herald, all the big lecture hall classes was in there, and you think about being in a room with 100 students and the teacher or the professor asks a question, right? You know the answer, you don't want to raise your hand because you don't want to say the wrong thing and have 99 other people say, look at this
Staring
idiot.
right at you.
Yeah, what a dumb answer. Or, oh, he's the smart kid. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It makes you feel uncomfortable, right? That's how I look at weddings. You know, I started looking at it like, listen, these are two families that are coming together. We don't know if they had a front row seat to this couple's love story. You know, we don't know. Some of these guests may be from out of town. Some might be seeing each other for the first time. You know, and this is the one time outside of funerals where we get all of the people that we love and care about in this one space.
Right.
You know, and there's a chance that 75% of them don't even know each other, or they might know each other, but they don't spend that much time around each other.
More acquaintance than they are relationships. Yeah.
So it's my job to put them in a space where they all feel comfortable with each other. And I'm sorry, playing a Little John record is just not going to do that, right? You know what I mean?
I mean, that might be part of it.
That might be
but
part of it,
that
right?
in and of itself isn't the solution.
Right. That's the last part, right? Where it translates to the dance floor. But that's when I kind of identify how important emceeing is, you know, and I'll always tell DJs this, listen, some people have it, some people don't. Some people are not afraid to speak in front of people, and they might do it and they might come off kind of scripted or corny, right? Some people just have that gift of gab. It's just God-given. You know what I mean? I watched you MC the Shrine Awards last week and the Shine Awards, and the one thing that I kept saying in the back of my head is I just watched how you went in and out of the pocket, just off script, but it just sounded like it was supposed to be there. What you said, where you went, that's God given. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one could train you to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for somebody who thinks he's somewhat good at emceeing, to be able to sit there and look and learn and observe and say, wow, like I knew he was a good MC, but he's taking it to another level. This is another chamber of what it is to be an MC, and the fact that you were able to do it so smoothly, you know what I mean?
We were dealing with technical difficulties, so I was like,
I'm giving you your flowers, right?
I really appreciate that, man.
I'm gonna make sure I'm giving.
And it means a lot coming from you,
for sure.
I mean
and I'm like, that's amazing, right? And the thing about it is, you could have made or broke that event. You know what I'm saying? Because you had technical difficulties, and it's one thing to have technical difficulties, like with the microphone, and then it's fixed and you think, okay, we're back on track. But then it happens continuously,
right,
to the point where the audience knows. And that's a very scary moment. And a lot of people wouldn't know how to deal with that, or to be able to point out that flaw in the event and then roll with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just think like having the ability to MC is definitely a benefit. It's undervalued. And I think a lot of DJs are so comfortable being comfortable that they shy away from different little elements that they can get better at to improve what it is that they're doing or add more value to the event.
That was freaking fantastic. There was so much good stuff that I just want to break down. We're going a little long, but I don't care, because there's just some things.
Long is the key. We got a lot of information, a lot of knowledge,
man.
Give.
And I mean, everything you just said was so spot on, and so many DJs, so many event profs can lean into everything you said. So a couple points I want to take away and dig into deeper. Number one, going back to the idea of the equipment's only going to get you so far. Your lights might burn out. Your speaker might go bad. You never know what might happen. But the only thing you know you can rely on is yourself throughout that night. So you can't just be able to be you can't be on such thin ice when you walk into an event that every piece of equipment or every factor that's out of your control has to go perfect for you to be able to do your job. You got to be able to know that no matter what happens, you got this.
Yes.
The other thing that really, that was like that. You just took me to school on that. The idea that the people that are in the audience that you don't like, the line you said, they didn't have a front row seat to this couple's love story. That was so insightful. And when you think about talking to a prospective client, or think about looking in the mirror and what you want to work on and how you want to get better, it's a mindset. Everything you said was a mindset of just accepting and saying to yourself, I'm going to approach this in a certain way. I'm going to care about the people that I work with. I'm going to care about the audience that I perform in front of. I'm going to help them tell their story with the words that I say, with the music that I play, with the equipment that I bring. But that mindset of knowing that, like, it's so much more than just walking in and hitting play and throwing on some lights. That is so freaking fantastic, that insight you just gave. But the other thing, you said two things that were almost contradictory to each other. Number one, you said it's God-given, right? You either have it or you don't. But then you also said that when you first started, you didn't quite know, like, you didn't have that, like, you didn't know how to, you started checking off things, right? You didn't know. But then you looked inside yourself and said, what do people say about me? What are the things about my personality that people tell me that they like? What are the skills I have in this part of my life, and how can I translate that into that part of my life? So I do think there's a certain amount of, like, if you're out there and you're not great at emceeing, you can get better, but not by trying to just copy somebody or do it the way you think it's supposed to be done. That the lesson I just learned from you is if I was starting over again, I would ask myself, what are the strengths that I have? What do I believe I do good? And lean into those things, and then turn those into my style of emceeing. That was all, man, that was fantastic. I love that. That was deep.
Appreciate it.
All right, so I want to bring this full circle so we can wrap up this episode. And we didn't even get to the topics that
we didn't even get to our second shot.
Next, we got. Listen, man, we're gonna do one of these. All right, we might close out because that's so good, but we're gonna do a different tasting at the front of every episode.
Okay.
So we're gonna hit something else on the next episode, and we'll get to the topics that I was originally gonna get to on the next episode. But to bring this back, we started talking about the industry in 2025, and it's tough out there right now. And depending on when somebody watches this, we're talking right now in Q1 2025, and it's a different year than it was in 2024. And you know what? Listen. You could say it's the politics that exist in the world. You can say it's it was COVID. There's a million reasons, because you might be in a part of the country where it's different.
Right.
You might be in a part of the country where the political landscape is looked on more favorably than in another part of the country. But both of those markets might say, bookings are down. So you can't just say it's one thing or another. But I do feel like it's a little tougher this year than it was in the past.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there was a time coming out of COVID in the last couple of years where it was almost like the work went into getting the referral. Like all of our effort was going into getting venues, planners, photographers, videographers to send prospective clients our way, right, to get past clients to refer their friends and family to us. And then once we got them in the system, the close was easier, and it's not as much anymore.
Right.
And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on, like, A, are you seeing the same thing? And B, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? Like, what are we going to do as event professionals in the next 6 to 12 months to try to change it up a little bit? Are you changing your sales process? Are you, just accepting that it's a slower year? Like, what are you going to do? Are you seeing the same thing?
I'm seeing the same thing. Couple of specific things are getting the client on the phone or on a Zoom meeting, to learn more about the event. I think one thing that's challenging and frustrating for me is that entertainment is looked at kind of like a product, you know, instead of a service. If I want a pair Nike Air Jordan sneakers, I probably use that twice in this conversation. I'm
That's
a
okay.
sneakerhead.
That's okay.
But I know those shoes are going to cost me $180, let alone if somebody is reselling them, I might pay double or triple if I want them that bad, right?
Right.
The thing about entertainment is that there's so many variables that there's additional questions we need to ask that we can't just give you a price up front. Well, for us, you know, as an experienced DJ, I feel that when you just have a price, it puts you at a disadvantage as a couple because they don't know what your wants and needs are.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's kind of how I look at it. So we need to have the conversation because I need to know some more specifics to be able to serve you and to be able to set you up for success, right? I don't know if you are having your event in one space versus cocktail hour will be in a separate room. Dinner will be in a separate room.
Ceremony in another room.
Dance party is in a separate room. Ceremony is outside. There's no power outside where the ceremony will be, right? So these are things that I need to know because I need to know what it is that I need to bring equipment-wise to your event, how much staffing I need to be able to set up and break down. And then I need to know the logistics of how the event is going to flow. I want to make sure that we're transitioning your guests smoothly from that outdoor ceremony inside to cocktail hour. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Are
there room flips that I got to set up in a much different window?
Exactly.
And do I have to? What's my access into the building? Is it in downtown Detroit? And you got to park on the street and then go through this lobby, then up that elevator, then down that hall, versus being at a door where my stage is 10 feet away. The physical logistics are wildly different, right?
Exactly. Is E3 Detroit DJing or playing for your cocktail hour? Or are they going to also play for part of your reception? Will we be doing a collaborative event? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? You know what I mean? Do we need to speak with them and say, hey, well, what kind of equipment are you bringing? Okay, you're using those. I'm using those too. So would you mind, you can plug into my setup so this room doesn't have like 20 speakers in the background of the couple's photography. You know what I mean? Things of that nature. So I think the conversations are not being had because it's hard to get the couples on the phone or even on a Zoom meeting. And then I'm also seeing that I don't feel the same level of research is being done as well. One thing that we've always been known for in the industry is our content. There's a lot of content out there of our actual events. And when someone contacts me and says, hey, well, do you have any videos of events you did? I know for one, they haven't looked at our social media. They haven't looked at our website. You know what I mean? They haven't looked at anything, and I'm like, wow, you asked me that question.
How did you get this far in the process?
Yeah, so I think that impacts sales because you don't have the opportunity to kind of have that conversation to identify what the couples need, and they don't have the opportunity to hear what you have to offer or what you can bring to the table.
Right. That's a good point. And also, you have a couple different DJs that are part of the Todd Everett Experience.
Correct.
We have some other bands and DJs that are part of E3 Detroit that aren't my group. And listen, let's just be brutally honest. Let's lay it out there. Let's be transparent. If somebody wants Todd Everett, that's a different price than if they want somebody else.
Correct.
And there's no reason to beat around that bush. There's a value to your experience, to what you bring, and that creates a demand for what you bring.
Right.
That is different. My band, if they want that band versus this band, it's going to be a different price because it's just It's not necessarily always about just the number of people in the band or whatever. It's about, the fact that we've been doing this for 30 years and we've built up a certain, reputation in how we do things and the experience that we give. And that's there. But people aren't necessarily seeing that right now, going way back to everything you said at the very beginning about reviews and all that. Yeah. They don't know the difference from one to the other. And they're using the lowest common denominator to set a benchmark as to what they should be paying.
Yeah.
And they're doing this on what's going to be the biggest and most important day of their lives when they want the absolute best experience.
Yeah.
And just saying this out loud and hearing you just kind of brought me back to thinking, like, if you're planning your wedding, your dream day, you shouldn't be thinking about who's going to do it for the cheapest. You should be thinking about it's great that you want to have the most cost-effective, wedding possible, but you should be focusing first on the experience you want.
Right.
And then on the price they're going to charge second. Doesn't mean it's less important. It just means find the people that'll give you the experience you want, right?
And I think a lot of times I'm finding that couples haven't had that conversation. They haven't thought about, I always say this, the Todd Everett Experience, we don't want to be a fixture at your event. A fixture is saying, well, I know we need a DJ, caterer, whatever. Let's grab one to have it there. That's the fixture. I want to be sought after. Listen, we're a fan of his work. We need him there. You know what I mean? And that's something that goes into, the pricing and the demand, right? And I think a lot of times couples don't have that conversation. Okay, this is our budget. This is what we want to invest into entertainment. And typically when the conversation starts with price, I already know offhand they don't know anything about our brand,
right?
The Todd Everett Experience brand. And I always say this, a Honda and the Cadillac have two different prices, and there's a reason, right? So you have to know before the conversation what's important to you. As far as like, what do you want in a band? What do you want in a DJ? Well, hey, I want someone, I have a lot of family coming from the DMV area. So we know we want to hear some go-go music. I have a lot of family that's coming from, the Midwest area. So we know we want, some house, some ballroom dancing music. We want to do some hustles. Then I have, a lot of my family is from the East Coast. So, we want some reggae, some hip hop, you know what I mean?
Yep.
We also know that we have a lot of people that haven't met. We have kind of like, we're going to have a culturally diverse audience. So we need someone that has a strong presence or ability to talk and engage our people to get up and dance because they don't know each other. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You also need to know, hey, I'm not really the party type. I'm more laid back. Oh, but my fiance, you can't get her off of the dance floor. You know what I mean?
Yep. These
are things that the DJ needs to know because, one thing that people don't realize, we're walking in blind. We don't know these 200 guests that you have,
Yeah.
We have no clue. You know them or know somewhat, some things about them, but we have no clue. You know what I mean? Yeah. So in order for us to elevate your event, throw us the alley hoop, set us up for success. We need this information. We need to have the conversation. Because at the point where you're just saying, well, what's your price? Okay, we're booking you. That's setting up your end results for failure.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
And I love, and if there's any younger DJs or DJs that haven't dug this deep into the music side of things, just the way you kind of role played, the questions that you ask about the types of music that different crowds, because I think DJs and even bands will just think, well, it's a wedding, that's the music, that's it. Every wedding's gonna be the same. The questions you just asked just show the level of thoughtfulness that goes into every event that you're doing, or for somebody that hasn't been thinking about that stuff, needs to take that away from this conversation, that there's so much more you can be doing to make sure that you're giving a unique experience to every client. And our next episode, we're going deep on music. That's it. We're talking about music on the next episode, and I can't wait. And I think that's a good spot to stop, because otherwise we could just keep going and going and going. So today, the takeaways, man, look at yourself, look at who you are, and dig into the strengths you have as a person, and use those to figure out how to be a better MC, a better event professional, a better DJ. Those were fantastic. Never settle for where you started. You can always get better. So many good things, man. So many good nuggets. Todd, what a great first episode, my man. Hey,
cheers.
You dropped gold on us today. Thank you very much. Cheers to you.
Absolutely.
I'll see you in the next episode, yeah?
For sure.
All right, cheers.